We've also got this multiplayer option. So if we remove this, so if we plug that into something, you can see it's actually a fat wire, which means it has these braided rainbow cable thing going on. That's because it's multiple values going through. So you can actually use a splitter to get at those individual values. So that type of fat wire is known as a player info fat wire, and this is the icon for it. And it'll give you different values out of these different for the different players if we have multiplayer on. So now if we go down here, because multiplayer is on, we can power this in a special way using a combiner. In the same mode, in player info mode. So then we have these 4 values that we can set. So if we go, say triangle will set player 1, and square will set player 2, 3 and 4, and then we power the variable modifier using that fat wire. Only the ones that have values sending into them will be affected by this modifier. So if we put continuously and we set it to add 1, then while we're holding the right button, only that player will get that value added to it. And you put it to the when powered on mode. Now if I play time and I press the different buttons, then it only adds to that thing. So when I tap square, it goes to 2 and powers it only for player 2. And then when you get the value out, then it sends that special value for player 2. So you can have different values for different players, and those are restored if that player is actually playing. So if you store a value, if you store the number 5 while 2 players are playing, if you store the number 5 for player 2, if you go through a doorway into a different scene, then it'll get that value as normal. But if you disconnect player 2 and then go to that scene, it won't load that extra value. And if you use get, you can do the same thing. So if we set that to add again, and we turn this into a get modifier, we can use that value and it will split in the same way. Then we can add to them all in separately. Next is persist in dream, and this is the main reason you'll want to use a variable is so that you can remember things even when you leave the scene and go elsewhere, or if you leave the dream and come back later. So if we just set up a basic thing, so this will add 1, and we'll have a doorway going out when we push the touchpad. Okay, and we'll just display the value. And because this has persist in dream on, we can get it in different versions. So let's make it a scene. Cool, so if we just remix that, and I'll move the background so it's visually clear what's going on, and the rest will just stay the same. Save it as another scene. Now if we make a dream and we add those scenes in, we'll just add an exit as well. Now when we go into here, we can affect the variable value, and then we can press a button to go into here, and then it will load that same value that we already stored. Okay, so let's play it in here. We go to play, and we press X a few times, so we've stored the value 6, and now we'll push the touchpad to go to the next scene, and it's loaded the value 6, and we can still affect it, and now we go out of the scene. Now if we play it again, it still remembered the value that we were up to, and if we just leave the scene and play it again, it still remembers because it has that persistence flag turned on. If we reset, then it will reset to the initial value, and then but still allow you to save the persistent value. Like that. Now you can actually put a dream within a dream, which has some benefits. So we make another dream, and we'll just put this one in there, and have an exit again. And I'll turn on update, so that we can just edit it, and it'll update. So we'll have this be the master, and we'll put that inside here. So we'll just edit it as normal, bring in that dream. So first we'll go into this scene, and then we'll go into the dream, and then we'll just go out. Okay, so now we're in the scene version, and we'll add to it, and now we're on 5. Now we'll leave the scene, and we'll go to the dream version, and it still loads that value, and we can still edit it and so on. And that dream has another scene in it, I believe. Cool. And then we pop out in there. It's a bit confusing, and then we're out. So it works as if those scenes were in this, were inside this dream as normal, but we can kind of import whole games into this if we're the owner of this dream here, or we're a collaborator on it. But there's another setting. If we edit it and we turn on a dream within a dream, that means it's a link to the original dream with its own persistent variables and scoreboards. So that means it won't be able to read the variables from here. It's like you're going out of this dream entirely and then loading up this dream separately. So now if we try it and we reset, we can play and add to it, and then we press the touchpad. We go into that dream, but it hasn't loaded it, and we get this tag down the bottom saying that we're in a different dream, basically. So it has its own separate variable. So we set it to 3, and now if we exit, then we go into here. You can see it's saved something, and if we play, it's got that value that we set while playing that other dream, because we were actually playing this one, and we were completely separately playing this. So I'm going to make a remix of this one that doesn't have the variable in it at all, and just lets you exit. So we'll just put this at a different angle, and we'll go out. So this one doesn't have any variables in it whatsoever, and we'll remind ourselves there's no vars in here. So I'll add that in there. In the middle, I'll have that one over there, and I'll have that one over there, so we can hook those up. So this one has a variable in it, this one doesn't, and this one has a variable in it. And this is to show that you don't need to have the variable in every scene in your dream or something. So for it to work. So this is set to 6. Now we're in a non-variable space, and then we go to the next scene, and it's loaded in 6 just as normal. And then out. Cool. So the way it knows to load the correct variable is if it has the same name and the same persistent dream is turned on. If that isn't turned on, then it just won't load the variable, and it won't set the persistent variable. If it has a different name, then it will be looking for a different name. But you can have, it seems you can have different values for these things and the initial value, and that all works just fine. So the way it considers a variable gadget in one scene to be similar to a variable gadget in another scene is the name and persistent dream. Right, another thing you can use is force reset. This means when this variable is loaded, it actually resets the variable to the initial value when it comes into this scene. So we can add to it by pressing X as normal, and we got to 11, and then we go to the other scene, but the other scene has that forced reset turned on, so then it stores that. But if we still change it to 6, for example, and then we exit the dream, we can go and play from this scene, and it's still set to 6. So it's not become unpersistent or anything. It just, when it gets to that scene, it sets it to its initial value. So let's use a controller sensor in remote controllable mode, which means we don't have to possess a puppet or anything. And I'll use triangle to power that modifier. So every time we press triangle, it'll add this value. So play mode, and then I'll press triangle a few times. Now we're on 180. If we pause and rewind, it resets to the value it already had. However, if we turn off restore value on rewind, and then try it on 150, and then it keeps that value. It also gives you these special pulse signals for increased and decreased. Each time you press X, we'll add 1, and each time we press triangle, we'll subtract 1. Right, so if we look at this interface, we can see when these flash and things. So now if I press X, it's adding, and you can see the current value down there. It's adding 1, and triangle, it's subtracting 1. And it's also pulsing out a value down here. I'd like to thank Xcantaloupe, Coldwitzer, DeadMC, and all of my other supporters for making this tutorial possible. Check out TAPgiles.com to find out how you can support me in helping Dreams creators. Thanks for your consideration, and I'll see you in the next one.